What's going on, everybody? It's Rick from Gardening with Barchuckin. This is actually something that I've wanted to do for quite a long time, so I'm finally getting a chance to do it. This is my 1 pound red wiggler bin that I got from Northeast Worms, and today I'm preparing to feed them some bokashi. And if you can see, there's a little bit of that white mold right on top. I've been making the bokashi now for about a year and a half. I have yet to add it to a worm bin, but today we're going to do it. So let's go ahead and take a quick dive in here, see how everything's looking. I did add this paper bag or cardboard on the feeding area. The last few feedings of this bin have not been recorded. This side's kind of drying out. This side had fresh bedding added. There's not a ton of worms in here, but there are some worms where I did the last feeding. I have a pine cone that you can see a bunch of the worms are inside having a little worm party. So before I get back into where I'm going to be feeding, I want to go ahead and I'm actually going to try to knock a bunch of this loose paper over into this feeding area. And I have, with my Vermihut Plus, so that'll make it slightly easier when I go to harvest. And I want to give this just a quick incorporation, a little mixing. This side's pretty dry. Right in here still looks a little moist. And that first handful, there's a bunch of worms still in this side. So the top has dried out. However, this bottom is still pretty moist. This is a 27-gallon tote, and it has these ridges down at the very bottom. So when I give it a good mixing, I like to get all the way down to where those ridges are and make sure that I really loosen everything up. No compaction, get full aeration for the worms. I just seen a tag from a banana peel, but that'll have to be taken out on another time. So one kind of a additional thing that I have really learned over the years with the worm bin is bedding. You really can't have too much. So I'm putting that pine cone down here at the bottom. You can see I use totally different types of beddings all throughout. Right here is like egg cartons or drink containers. I have some larger pieces, like this was a tube, whether I'm thinking it was a paper towel roll. So as long as the worms have that source of carbon, they're going to be happy. And I like happy worms. So this is just dry cardboard. Now, I like adding grit to my worm bins, and I have some pulverized azomite. So the pulverized azomite, as well as ground up eggshells, are good sources of grit for the worms. As they take small bites of the food and then wiggle around, that helps to break down the food for them. They have a crop and a gizzard, so no teeth. So they need something to help break down that food. Now, if you've never heard of Bokashi, basically I have a 5-gallon bucket that I add food scraps to. I add an inoculated rice hull that has lactobacillus bacteria on it, and what it does is it breaks down these food scraps, creates a mold. I started it in August of last year, and then I filled it by about February or March of this year. So it was 5-gallon bucket completely filled. I press all the air out, as much air as possible, and then I have to let it sit for at least 2 to 4 weeks is what I do. And then I started incorporating it into my outdoor compost, but I still had some, so I was like, you know what, I wanted to definitely try this. And there is an odor that's coming off of it, but it's not a stinky odor. It is a fermented odor to me, which is pretty sweet, almost like a wine. Some people say it smells like pickle or vinegar, but this to me has a very sweet aroma. It does have, majority of it is fruit. One thing that I need to be cautious of is adding it to my outdoor compost. It definitely heats up, so I will have to keep an eye on this to make sure that it doesn't heat up too much for the worms. But as you see, they have a lot of real estate that they can go into. And you can see kind of some of those juices. I will drip them in, and like I said, that has like a almost like a homemade wine kind of smell to me. So you can see this process of Bokashi does not actually break these food scraps down. It's like a pre-breakdown. So typically you would be adding this to either a soil factory or your compost outside, or digging a hole and burying this in your garden. I seen a lady that I watch, her name's Amanda. I watch her on Instagram and YouTube. She actually just got done doing this, and that's what kind of gave me the courage slash mindset to give this a try. I will add a bit more bedding to the top of this. And then, because I have it, ground up eggshell, just another source of grit for the worms, like I explained earlier. Every time I end up feeding, I always try to cover with castings. So I'm going to go ahead and pull from this side and try to flip some up and over, and then bring some from over on this side. Okay, the reason why I try to do this is the castings help retain some moisture, and one of the reasons why I always cover this with some of the bubble wrap is to help keep that moisture in, keep the worms happy. Also, having the castings helps to mask the scent of the food scraps a bit, so I want to try to keep other bugs and critters out of here. I do have the roly-polies, the pill bugs, whatever you want to call them, and I'm kind of okay with that. They are helping to break down and help finish off these food scraps, and my end goal is castings, so I don't care really how I go about getting them. And then finally, to the top here, I like to add a little bit of worm chow. This is just expired flour, cornmeal, oats ground up, and a tiny bit of pulverized eggshell. So I will take and add this back to the feeding area. Try to smooth this out just a little bit. And then I go ahead and cover this back up with the bubble wrap, and what I'm trying to do is to keep allowing at least the top to dry, and then when I incorporate it, it'll go ahead and kind of rehydrate the drier castings. But if it's way too wet, it will not sift well, so I want it to dry out a bit, and that's why I go ahead and I'm placing more of the bubble wrap kind of on that feeding area to allow that to stay covered, stay nice and hydrated for the worms. I hope you enjoyed this feeding. This is going to be part 1. I'm going to give this about 2 weeks, and then I'll film another episode, part 2, and show you the results of feeding the Bokashi to my worm bin. If you guys have any questions, don't forget to drop them down in the comments. Thanks for coming along, checking out this video. Everybody have a great day.